Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
And all the ridiculous stories in between.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Body podcast with myself, Holly, and of course, Mia. And today we're also joined by a very special guest, Safia, who has actually been on the podcast before, and she is a Beyond Body recovery coach among so many other things in this life, and she's here to have a really great and important chat with us. So welcome, Saf. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. Like, it just feels like a bit of a Beyond Body meeting, really, doesn't it? Like, one of our team.
Doesn't it? Yeah. We just have the mic on this time. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
I'm just actually wearing clothes that you should probably wear to a meeting and not my pajama pants.
Pajama pants on the bottom? Just meeting attire on the top?
No, I just show up to the meetings with pajama pants on my head routinely, as you would recall.
I'm all for wearing my pajama shorts when I'm in client sessions. As long as you're looking somewhat professional on the top, without a doubt, it's perfect.
Be your best self.
Absolutely.
So, Saf, we always kick these things off with a bit of a highlight and a low light, and they range from the very, very serious to the very, very silly. So what is a highlight or a low light for you in life lately?
Yeah. So my eldest, so I've got 3 little ones, and my eldest is turning 5 on Wednesday, and she just had her birthday party on the weekend. It was Trolls themed. So because of I know.
It's quite niche.
I know. Very niche. The venue were like, we've never done a Trolls theme before. She's a girl who knows what she wants in life. But she was like, you know what, Mummy? Trolls just want to have fun. So that was what it was. It went really well. I was a bit nervous of 34-year-olds running around, but it went fine. So that was a definite highlight. And I'm looking forward to celebrating her birthday, of course, as well. A low light is... Yeah, I think the same daughter, bless her, she is just struggling with she has a lot of allergies. So she is struggling a lot with her allergies and just having a lot of symptoms related to that. But at the same time, I've been so impressed with her strength through it. I just never thought that she could be as brave as what she is. So she's teaching me a lot through it.
Oh my gosh, beautiful.
Yeah, bless her. So yeah.
I think it would be so beautiful to see those displays of your child showing resilience at such a young age.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I just never imagined she would have it. She has more resilience than me. Honestly, she does. So it's incredible. I'm like, right, it's just setting you up for a life where you're going to be very resilient when you're older. I'm really proud of her. But it's hard. It's hard as a mum to see, you know?
Is she off to school yet, Saf?
Yeah, she's at school. She's in FS2. She's at FS2 in Australia. I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, and she loves it. She's a school obsessed. She just can't wait to get there. So yeah, it's really nice.
That's beautiful, Saf. They were great. Highlight, low light. What about your week, Mill? What's been happening?
So mine are a bit enmeshed. I just moved, which is why I'm in a very echoey room. So the 10th time I've mentioned that to the girls. Can you tell that I'm very, very aware of it? So hopefully this isn't too terrible to listen to on my end, but absolutely loving it. It's everything I hoped it would be. It feels exactly the way that I hoped it would feel, being able to get up and go for a walk, watch the sun come up over the ocean, being able to be around the corner from Mum, who's just had a major surgery, linking back up with people down here. It's been exactly what I hoped it would be, which, you can plan for these things and set things up to a certain extent, and then life just has its ways of actually making that all feel the way it's supposed to. But then also just the little annoying niggles of moving, that my internet can't reach further than my living room. I hear myself on the phone and I'm like, I'm a Karen. I'm a Karen. I am so frustrated on this phone call and just trying to keep it contained so I don't sound like a Karen. But my inner Karen I'm feeling. I don't let her out, but she definitely lives within me at moments when I'm on my 10th phone call with my internet provider.
You know what? I think Karen gets a bad rap. Generally, I feel like we really demonize her, and it's actually okay to have a little bit of Karen come out of all of us sometimes, and that's a really valid reason.
I think when she comes out in ways that are what we see on social media terrible. But I think we all have that, inner pushback of like, I think a good example of when you need a Karen is like when you go to the mechanic as a woman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they kind of, I cannot tell you how many times in a year I had my tires changed because this mechanic just kept thinking I was just going to say yes. And do you know what? I did, until Karen came out and she was like, I might be a woman who doesn't understand cars, but I'm not an idiot. Like, we're on our third set of tires in like just over 12 months.
Mm.
So I think in that case, when you're advocating for yourself, a little bit of Karen doesn't go too far. What about you, Hol? Highlight, low light?
So low light, obviously, there's been lots of like cyclones, winds, waves, floods up north. So that's been, I'm not up there at the moment, but most of my friends and family are. So it's been just a stressful time where I've just felt a bit glued to my phone looking at all the news updates, which doesn't really feel good. Everyone's safe now, which is fantastic, but it was quite a stressful, anxiety filled week, I'd say last week. But a highlight, I've just been really trying to focus on just little glimmers in my day. And I was at the post office this morning posting something to my best friend whose birthday it is tomorrow. And I was like writing out the address, and there was this like sweet elderly man. I'm going to say he was 80 or older. And he was like writing a card to his granddaughter, and he had his little like, what are they called? Like little address book. And it was just the cutest thing ever. And he was like looking through all the addresses. And I was like, this is just so beautiful. You are so untouched by me. I'm just like Googling the address. What is it again? And that he just is like so in his own ways. And it just warmed my heart. It was the most simple thing, but I just loved it.
Oh, I
Love that.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
It is like Rolodex of grandchildren.
Absolutely. He did say to me, I've got to express it because I almost forgot.
Uh, I also love that you're like, what's that called again? Oh yeah, an address book.
I've never had one, obviously. I don't know anyone's addresses. Literally none.
Me neither. I struggle.
No.
Got to know my own. All right, fabulous. So lovely to be able to touch base because, as you said, Saf, because we do this at the top of our meetings. We check in with how things have been going. So I have to keep remembering we're recording this.
Yeah.
That's the mind frame to think through. So we're here today to talk about Ramadan, which is something you and I, Saf, have spoken about for a long time, having this conversation. So I'm incredibly excited that we have the privilege of speaking to you about this because, faith is so personal and it's such a, personal relationship that you have with your expression of that faith. So for you to come and share it is incredibly generous. We really appreciate it. And obviously, there's some intersections of Ramadan and eating disorder recovery, which I have learned from afar. So I'm really keen to sort of get the insights from your perspective as far as what needs to be spoken about in terms of some of these intersections. To kick us off, can you tell our audience a little bit about Ramadan and what it means to you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And girls, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I absolutely love it. And yeah, and do you know what? I never take for granted the fact that people are interested and want to learn. I just love that so much. So thank you. Just to start off, obviously, like I'm not a scholar, but I am somebody who is Muslim and I have chosen this faith. And it like I'm not just born into it. It's something that I've done a lot of like learning about to get there. And I'm somebody who's had an eating disorder and now being a coach. So I feel like I really understand it from that perspective, where those two places interlink, like you were saying. So Ramadan is a really important month in the Muslim calendar. It's one of the 5 pillars, in fact. And it was the month, in fact, when the Quran was first revealed. The Quran is the holy book that Muslims read. And so to celebrate that month, from sunrise to sunset, we abstain from eating, drinking, intimacy. We try to increase our prayers, our charity. We try to be aware of like how we're using our voice. So like, are you talking negatively about people? Are you being as patient as you can? Are you snapping at people? Like really trying to be aware of that. And also trying to have just generally like good thoughts. So it's not just fasting of like food and drink, it's really fasting of like all the kind of negative ways that we might show up in the world. It's also a month where we kind of really introspect. And the main reason for Ramadan, like why do Muslims fast, is to achieve something called taqwa. And taqwa is an Arabic word, which is very multi-layered, but like on a simple level, it means God consciousness. So like for that month, the whole idea is that you become more aware of a higher being and of God, and that you connect to that God. what Ramadan means to me, I love that question because what it means to me has changed so much over the years. When I was little, it meant something totally different to what it means now. So I'll start with there briefly. When I was little, it was just fun. Like if you speak to a Muslim kid about fasting, they'll be like, I can't wait to start. I want to start. Usually we have to say to them, like, chill out. Like you're little, don't you can't fast. Like all the kids want to fast. And I'm dual heritage. So my dad is Pakistani Muslim, my mum is English Christian, and I was raised by my mum and my stepdad, who also is not Muslim. And so when me and my sister, my younger sister, we came to an age of fasting, I was actually living with my mum and my stepdad. And honestly, like God bless them, they did everything they could to make Ramadan special for us. Like my mum got up before we would get up in the morning to eat, which we call suhoor, the time when you eat. She would get up and create this table of like amazing foods, like the best chocolate croissants and egg muffins, all the stuff you'd ever want in the world. My stepdad, who probably would identify as being agnostic or atheist, he used to fast with us for moral support. So it was like such a special time, and I had the best memories fasting with my sister of like eating in the morning, breaking our fast, spending the day being like, oh, I'm hungry, you know, like it was just fun. And the extent of understanding what Ramadan is to understand how poor people feel. So people would say to us, hey, why do you fast? We'd be like, to understand how poor people feel. That's why we do it. And even though it is an amazing part of it, because you do get to the end of the day and you're like, oh my gosh, I've only not eaten for a day and I'm hungry. Imagine how people in the world who are like in famines feel. It's so much more than that. So I'll jump to like what it means to me now, which is so much more. It's a month where I kind of like get off the hamster wheel of life. I mean, nothing stops in being a mother and a wife and working and everything, but you kind of just shift into another gear of like getting off the hamster wheel, trying to reorient your life and kind of figure out what's important to you. Connect to God, connect to your faith, connect to your purpose and this path, really introspect and like look at myself. Honestly, girls, it's like therapy. I'm not going to lie. It breaks your shell in a way that I feel like hardly anything does. And I do see this come up in other faiths as well. Like a lot of faiths have a period of either fasting, or I know that Holly, you've talked about like retreats that, you know, silent retreats. There's a lot of these kind of very spiritual events that break us in a way that is very difficult to otherwise. And I feel like it's a month where I really go inwards and I really do a lot of soul searching of like how to become a better version of myself. The idea being that from the beginning of the month, I want to have changed in a way so that by the end of the month, I'm a better version of myself and also my connection to God, myself, people, not just Muslims, just generally humanity, like us as people get strengthened.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
don't
am
know.
so touched listening to you talk about this from someone who, like, I don't identify with any religion, but do very much have my own understanding of spirituality. It is so beautiful to hear your evolution of your faith, and also that it's such a pleasurable, connective sense of just understanding what it means to be a human. Like, I think all the things you're touching on are so many of the things that are just missing in modern day life that I think so many people, all the people, everyone listening maybe would value from. Like just some of those like core ideas of, you know, self-connection, introspection, connecting with community, understanding perspective are so valuable and so important, but so often missed, I think, in just everyday life.
Yeah. Thank you, Holly. That's honestly so true, because literally I feel like the 11 months of the year, I also don't connect enough. And so I feel like it's a month for me to reset. And the whole idea is that we don't just step in for that month and be like, right, this is the month where I just really check myself and I see how I can improve. The idea is like come out the month and be like, right, I'm going to try and do this through the year. I'm going to try and stop and reflect on how I can be a better person, how I can like talk better to people, how I can be more patient, you know, like patience is a big one. Like I'm up through the night with my little ones and like it's like, okay, now try and be patient. When you've done that and you haven't eaten and drunk, like are you still going to be able to be patient? Like it's a real like training for the rest of the year. So yeah, I'm glad you connected with that.
It's beautiful. I love what you talk about, even with the interconnectedness with like the time spent with family, with, you know, breaking the fast, and sort of how meal times become this, and I've seen it. I've found myself on, I mean, TikTok does a lot of terrible things, but one thing that it's done this year is, for some reason, probably because I've been, looking into this subject to see what I can learn. But what's been most interesting to me has been seeing behind the scenes of just families, and how
Mm.
they connect around these times of the day. And even this funny little meme that's come up with cats that in the family who wake up with the family at the time when they're, prepping for the day, and the cats are half asleep, and everybody's laughing and, preparing together and sitting together and starting the day together and ending the day together. And it's so heartwarming and beautiful. And it's then looking into the deeper layers of, as you say, that concentration for a month of how we would like to show up in the world, and having that refresh of all of those values that we want to reconnect to. Because I read that charitability is a really, really core part of the month, particularly as Muhammad was considered to be highly charitable. And is it true that if there's a charitable act that you engage in, that for that month it's something which is meant to sort of multiply, and it's kind of like a pay it forward mentality, that if you see it and you experience it, then it kind of proliferates and is meant to be
Yeah.
this pay it forward kind of chain of events.
Absolutely, Mia, honestly. And that is generally through the year. We're really encouraged to do a lot of charity, but even more so in Ramadan. Like you said, it's like meant to be multiplied. Like, because like I said, like it's really a time of like purifying yourself. And how many of us are like attached to physical stuff, like money? Like,
Totally.
not everybody, but it's hard sometimes, isn't it? Parting with your money. So like giving charity and really, doing that like happily is something that's going to help to purify you. And what you were saying about the food stuff, like breaking the fast and everything, you're so right. It's, it's kind of like, Holly, what you talk about in terms of like all
Mm.
of the stuff you do around, enjoyment of food. And also when we were training with Carolyn, right? Do you remember we learned about like those soul moments
Mm.
around food? Like that's what it reminds me of. Like when me and my husband are breaking our fast, we usually break our fast with a date, because that's like what the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to do. So we all try and do the same. And it's like one of those real soul moments, like of just like hearing the azan, because I'm in Dubai. So I'm lucky to hear the azan from the mosque, just hearing that, drinking water, having a date, and just like really feeling grateful. It's like a lot of feelings of grateful, for everything that we have, and feeling very blessed.
Mm.
Yes.
I also guess it's because it's sort of like you're saying, it's fasting from so many things. Imagine it would also be sort of just this complete like dopamine reset in a lot of ways, as well as just like choosing the discomfort, right? Like not eating in a day is obviously uncomfortable. I think like really going inward often can be really uncomfortable for people, but it's sort of choosing that, and I guess just reminding everyone that it's not necessarily about like having that urge for something and that instant gratification. It's about actually working on delayed gratification and knowing that that is the thing that gives us so much more stability and grounding in the long run.
You just articulated it beautifully, Holly. That's like bang on. That's bang on what it is, and it's that is what like we're meant to take out of that month. It's kind of that reset. Like, you're hungry, you're thirsty. The whole idea is not to sit on like, not to doom scroll like during that time. The
Yeah.
idea is like to
Yeah.
really turn inwards and like, really try and do that
Mm.
soul search and try and to find
Yes.
a way to get through it,
So interesting. I'm learning so much. This is fascinating. So then, Saf, if we're sort of looking at some of the intersections, right, of someone managing eating disorder recovery during this time, what do you think are some of the main challenges that might come up for people here?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a lot. And if it's okay, I'll use some of my own experience of having had
Sure.
an eating disorder to explain them. Because I think that, like many of us, my eating disorder kind of morphed and changed. And as it did, I experienced the challenges of Ramadan differently. So, like many of us, my eating disorder did start with like dieting, disordered eating. And so when I would engage in Ramadan, when I had started that part of my eating disorder journey, I would say, it was tough. Like I would do a couple of days, not for the right reason, just because I felt pressure to do it. I felt like I'm a Muslim, this is what I should do. So I did it. I would just be really cold. I'd be shivering. So my body physically couldn't take it, because I couldn't meet the needs of Ramadan. I couldn't wake up before sunrise and eat a larger meal. So what I do now is like before sunrise, I give a good amount of time to make sure I really nourish myself. I drink and I eat enough food. And I wasn't able to do that because I had so many rules in place.
Yeah.
So if you're, you know what I mean? Like, and that is the thing also with any eating disorder, you have so many rules. And my faith and God was not on my pedestal. Like, my pedestal was around manipulating my body, wanting to feel safe, if I restricted, whatever. And also I had a lot of issues around movement at that time. So I couldn't drink for a whole day. Like, how was that going to impact the way that I moved my body? Like, it was just not my priority. Like, my priority was what the eating disorder wanted. So I feel like that is a massive challenge of trying to engage in the month. And then also, like, I had a period of time where I went through a lot of orthorexia as well. And I feel like the messaging around Ramadan usually is very positive, but sometimes if you've got an eating disorder, you know how you can see things in a different lens. So where there's a lot of messaging around eating healthily for suhoor in the morning and iftar in the evening and nourishing your body, if you've got orthorexia, you can see that as a very black and white of like, I can only eat those types of foods and I need to purify my body. And this is a time to purify, and you're not thinking about purifying your soul. You're taking it way too literally of just, purifying your body. And so like, if you go to somebody's house to break your fast, and what have they got? What food are they going to offer me? I can't eat. Like, there's a lot of that around it. And then I feel like there's also that element of like shame, of embarrassment, feeling like you can't join in. And for me, when I had anorexia and I finally got help and I went to my therapist and she was like, you know what, Safia, you can't fast. That was like such a weight off my shoulders, because even though until then I knew I couldn't, like when I was diagnosed with my eating disorder, I knew I couldn't, but having somebody to tell me that really lifted it off. But the challenge then came that I felt like very disconnected from my faith. I was like, okay, so I can't fast, so I'm not going to do anything. It was like that all or nothing black and white thinking, I was like, right, well, I can't fast, so I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to do the charity. I'm not going to do the good thing. Da, da, da. I'm just going to like block it all out and try and numb myself to it. And I think that there's not a lot of awareness around Islam and eating disorders, and I don't feel like it's spoken about very much. So I think you can feel quite alone in the whole thing, And also something I didn't suffer, which was binge eating. I'm sure that would be very difficult for somebody who's going through an eating disorder. Can you imagine?
Yes.
Those periods of
Absolutely.
restriction, that period of restriction, and then eating and being able to feel like, oh no, like I'm not going to eat tomorrow, so let me get it in as much as I can today. Like, it must be so challenging. And that one I feel like is almost even harder, because I feel like it's so misunderstood. I'm sure that a lot of people say to them, hey, why don't you use this as an opportunity to kickstart healthy eating or start new habits or whatever, like without understanding what it truly is. And actually that kind of talk is actually more detrimental to somebody who's recovering. So I feel like lots of challenges in different areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mel.
No, I think the purification thing is absolutely it. You can just see the two lenses that it, can be seen through, because when we were talking about sort of the beautiful elements and your current experience of it, your understanding of that word and your interpretation of it and your use of it now. But as soon as you said it, I was like, I know what my eating disorder would have thought of that.
100%.
Absolutely.
Been like,
Been
bring it on.
Like a little eating disorder permission slip and being like, yep, and I'm allowed to do. And that's me doing, because we're always looking for the justification for the behavior or for the way of thinking, and even not the justification, but whether it's, even looking to other people when people are going through recovery and they're like, but other people do X, Y, Z. And it's the intention and it's your use of it that changes the nature of it. So then you cross that in with faith, and it would be a very overwhelming, where you feel like, if I don't participate, then I'm not doing this. But if I do, then I'm sort of not maybe doing what I need to do recovery. There'd be so much inner conflict around all of it.
Absolutely. I think it would be just how you're sort of describing it. It sounds like there would just be such a confusion with priorities. And particularly if someone is not, I think, and all those challenges you've just mentioned, of course, they're going to be a difficulty for someone in active recovery, but also particularly people who are not in active recovery. I imagine for people in this position, it would really require this really strong level of interoceptive awareness to ask themselves, who am I fasting for? Allah or my eating disorder? Because like Mia was saying, if I was in that situation, it was 10 years ago, my eating disorder would take absolute advantage of that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Holly and Mia, you just literally, you got it so correctly, because firstly, just saying to what you were saying, Mia, in terms of like the way I was speaking about the introspection and stuff, something I didn't mention is I don't come out of Ramadan a pure soul.
Yeah.
inverted commas. Like I'm still messy. I'm still a messy human. I'm still like still got my stuff to work through, obviously. Like, you know, it's not like I come out pure. So I feel like that is a word that we need to be careful. Like
Mm,
generally, you know, when we're talking about Ramadan, I need to be careful the way that I speak about that. But also, yeah, like you said, Holly, in terms of intention, intention is everything. There is no point like fasting and you're not actually doing it for Allah. You're doing it for like your eating disorder, or you're doing it to please other people, or you're doing it to like so that you can fit in or whatever. Because if your intention is not correct, there's no point you doing it. You're only going to feel like hungry, you know? Is
Yeah.
way better to do something that is more aligned to where you are in your journey. Like if you're somebody who's going through an eating disorder, why don't you do some charity? Why don't you read more Quran? It is the month of the Quran, actually. So why
mm,
don't you read some? Like, why don't you learn about God and how merciful and kind He is? Why don't you, you know, this month I've really focused on listening to women speaking about Islam and actually learning a lot about the female companions at the time of the Prophet, peace upon him, and like all the awesome stuff they did. I was like, I had no idea that there were these amazing women
mm,
who, like you do, Mia, stand up for social justice and all these incredible things. And I'm like, oh, I wish we were taught about that.
Mm.
mm.
And so I feel like there is so many ways that you can come out of the month closer to your faith. And also, what a fantastic month to focus on recovery. Like, what
Yeah.
an amazing month to
Yes.
like, okay, my Ramadan this month is actually about trying to get to the end of the month, having moved forward, you know?
Mm,
Just on
mm,
something you said before, Saf,
mm.
why do you think that it's not as discussed? What are your views on why it's not high? Because I would assume that maybe there would be more conversation about it around this time of year, and you and I have discussed it, as I said before, multiple times about the need and urgency to have conversations like this. What, in your view, is sort of preventing, or even if not preventing, why do you think it just isn't maybe highlighted as much?
It's such a good question, Mia. I'll be honest. I mean, I think that there is still a lot of stigma around it
Yeah.
of like, you know, if mental health generally.
Mm.
And I feel like it is getting better of Muslims speaking about mental health, which is amazing. But obviously, getting into eating disorders is a more specialized area. But understanding that, like, it's not like, oh, you're suffering from a mental illness, so just go and pray more, or you just need to strengthen your faith. Like, understanding that it is
Yes.
something that you get professional help for and support for, and that actually fasting's not going to fix it. Like, it's okay.
Mm,
But it's sad because in the Quran itself, it says that if you are ill or unwell, that you shouldn't be fasting.
Yeah.
So actually, you not fasting because you're unwell is actually a form of worship. You kind of going against that is like, you know, you doing it for other reasons then, because God has given you like a pass not to do it for that reason because it's not good for you.
mm.
So I feel like, and I don't know, I feel like it's just, I wish it was spoken about more. I really, really, really
Yeah.
do. Right?
I would imagine because there's sort of that barrier and just lack of discourse and conversations around eating disorders that it could be just another hurdle could be that it's particularly challenging for people to reveal their illness to their community, to their family, if they particularly if they feel like it's just not going to be understood. That a lot of people, particularly if they're not, you know, very well supported with community around them, who have an understanding of their mental illness and what that actually looks like, that of course, I think it would be really natural for people to be like, I mean, I've just got to fake it till I make it and hide this.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And there is a lot of that. And one of the charities, I only really know one charity in all honesty that, and there might be more, but it's the only one I know of, which is Islam and Against Eating Disorders. And there is a lot of girls that they work with who are Muslim and have eating disorders. And there's
Oh
lots of
wow.
shame and embarrassment
Yeah.
about it, feeling they need to hide it. A lot of lack of understanding. You know what it's like in a lot of the world.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
people don't get eating disorders. And so certainly in the Muslim world also, there needs to be more of an awareness.
mm.
Absolutely. I mean, because obviously we're an international practice. Like we hear from people all over the world, and it's certainly not an uncommon experience to have people reach out from all kinds of areas saying there's just nothing, and if there is anything, it's very very limited, or it's pretty archaic. Like it's pretty what would be an understanding of eating disorders that we may have known like 10 or 15 years ago, and it hasn't really moved beyond that. So yeah,
Mm.
it's certainly not specific to one region. It is really really common to hear that feedback. um
Mm,
so Saf, I love how you shared that with us through the lens of your experience, because obviously you've had this journey where you've then gone through recovery and now you're a recovered coach. So, whether through your experience or just more broadly, how do you think someone can strengthen their recovery journey with the spiritual aspects of Ramadan. And like I said, whether that's through the lens of your experience or just, a broader understanding, given we're talking about like different intentions and perspectives, how do you think there can be like a recovery lens that, Ramadan can, be supportive of recovery through?
Yeah, beautiful question, because I feel like an eating disorder recovery can be such a beautiful doorway into spirituality. And I think it is for so many of us, whatever your faith, or whatever your mental health struggle that you're going through. So many people go through a period of anxiety or depression, and that's their doorway into kind of figuring out more about themselves and the world.
Mm,
And so this could be your doorway.
mm,
And so this can be seen as a month of really trying to move forwards in your recovery. I would say first and foremost, like, strengthen your connection with God, figure out who God is. If you're somebody who's been raised with the idea of God being a very harsh God, that's not who God is at all.
mm,
He's the most merciful. That's, in Islam, we have 99 names for God, and they're all beautiful ones. And just figuring out that there's so many books. And then just making dua, which we say dua, which is basically like prayer, kind of like talking to God. So that's like a first thing that you could do, which would be a beautiful way to spend Ramadan. Another one would be, I would say, get help. Like, what an amazing thing to do. In Ramadan, I made the intention to get better for hopefully one day being able to fast, and hopefully being able to strengthen my relationship with God, which I know will be the best when I'm in a healthy body and when I'm nourishing myself and looking after myself. So why not start going to therapy, working with a dietitian, find like a community full supports. It's a month where you could do all the other stuff. Like, there's so many prayers you can do. You could recite Quran. You could do charity. Like, if you don't fast, how about work on like going to like your local community area and like giving out free food?
mm,
Like, what a beautiful way. Like, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in your soul giving that food. It's not like just because you're not fasting, you can't take part in it. So I wish I could go back and say to myself now is like, don't have the black and white all or nothing thinking.
mm.
Just be like, you can take part in it. Ramadan is not for you, like fasting. The fasting part is not for you right now. There are so many other ways that you can take part in it, that you're going to feel spiritually connected and is going to be healthy for you.
I really like this really expansive approach you're talking about here, Saf, because I think we can see spirituality through all expressions as this anchor to meaning, I would say, and whether that's through, self-connection, God, love, whatever it means for that person, which I think some of those sort of core tenets there, like meaning, self-connection, love, they're all aspects that can't be ignored in any healing experience, particularly with when we're talking about someone's relationship to food. So I think even though obviously there's these really obvious issues for someone who's struggling with a disordered eating and Ramadan particularly, there is also so many anchors of connection here that could ultimately like just support not only someone's eating disorder recovery and where they're at, but also their life beyond. Because how you're sort of saying it, I'm interpreting it is that it's ultimately like a removal of a lot of noise, right? And whether that's like busyness or kind of like forgetting of values, or for some people could be diet culture or whatever it might be, to come back to something. I mean, to use that word again, but you know what I mean? Sort of that like pure experience of like connection, grounding, that anchored feeling. That is what I think that is one of the things that ultimately actually keeps people well once they've done all the behavioral work in recovery. So really having a like kind of incubator time and incubator month to focus on that greater meaning could do wonders for someone's recovery.
Honestly, you said that so beautifully, Holly. I could not say that any better, but absolutely, it really is that. Like, honestly, it's gorgeous. And you're right, like, it's so much a part of so many people's recovery journey is that form of connection of values. And like it's just like you said, an incubator period, a period of like where you're really trying to focus on that. And yeah, life happens. And it's not like I'm going to stay anchored to it all the time, even in the month of Ramadan. I'm not going to stay anchored to it, but it's like constantly trying to reorient yourself and trying to be mindful as much as possible about what this world is about, the fragility of it, how incredible it is, all the blessings, and like what you want to achieve in this life.
I really do relate it sort of what you said before, Saf, about when I've gone on silent meditation retreats, because I understand those experiences like a recalibration of everything. And at the end of them, I'm so much more in tune to my own physical sensations, my emotions, my values, what's important, how I want to spend my time, what I'm thinking about, all of these experiences. And it sounds so similar to that experience.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love the idea of, as you said, taking a much longer term view of it, which is that maybe for this Ramadan, this one where you don't maybe engage in fasting or any of those areas which might at the moment not be used, from your healthy self, it's an investment as you used it, which is to use the periods where maybe you couldn't do those things as
Mm.
motivation of I would like to be in that position one day to be able to engage with that in a way that is rooted and anchored in my healthy self, right? Which is something that I tell people often where they're like, it's Hol and I talk about this all the time, like the coulda, woulda, shoulda-ing ourselves of like, well, I want to be there and I want to be there now and I want it and now today. And if I can't, then what's that? And it's like, well, what if this is an investment in that future version of you being able to be fully engaged in your faith in the way that you would like to be because you did the work now? And so being able to use that period as an investment in future you being able to be fully engaged in that way, I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it, where it's like there's no time lost here. It's just how you used it.
Mm.
Mm.
Absolutely. I feel it so deeply. I feel it so deeply now. I love Ramadan. I actually dropped my daughter off at school yesterday, and the teacher was like, "You seem to be like the one who loves Ramadan the most." And I was like, "I genuinely do, but maybe it's because I feel like for so many years I didn't fast and I didn't get to take part that now I'm like, I love it." And so maybe part of your journey is like not right now, but in the future, you're going to feel it so deeply. And it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And so how cool that you're going through this period where you're healing yourself so that
Mm.
one day that you can. And we often do those time hops with clients, don't we? We say
Yeah.
like, hey, this is where you want to be in 5 years time. How are you going to get there? And
Mhm.
getting there, it's not going to be taking part in it and setting you back and triggering you and getting into a deeper part of your eating disorder. Getting there is actually you doing something a bit different, and your journey is going to be a bit different to other people's this Ramadan, but that's okay. You're not alone. There are many people who are suffering from eating disorders.
Mm. I think just on that as well, Saf. So if you were to give one piece of advice for someone going through recovery during this time, what would you say to them?
I would say like you're a good person. Like I felt like I was a bad person. Like I felt like I was bad because I couldn't take part in the month. And I would say you're a good person. God sees you for who you are. God sees you for the journey that you're going through. And he has said to you, it's okay, don't fast. Like don't eat and drink. This eating, not eating and drinking right now is going to harm you. And I would say take part in the month in a way that spiritually connects you, and there are so many ways that you can do that, and I'd say get help. Don't do this alone. You don't need to do it alone. Get the support.
That's
Yeah.
gorgeous. I think
Mhm.
particularly when you use the word that, you ascribe to God the most, which is merciful, which is if we are supposed to live in God's image and be merciful, like it has to start at home, and there's nowhere more like home than with yourself.
Yeah,
Mm.
Mia. Like, and sometimes when I struggle to think about that mercy, because I do struggle sometimes because I was raised with a loving God, but obviously, like you hear things
Yeah.
around where you're like, maybe he's not. Um, I start to think about like something that's said in Islam that is like they say that God loves you 7 times more than your mum. And I think about, would my mum
Mm,
even want me to fast if I
mm,
was unwell?
Mm.
Absolutely not. So many years she was like, "You're not even considering it, are you? You're not even thinking about it, are you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I'm like, if she's got that perspective and God loves me 7 times more, I'm pretty sure he'd be like, "Ugh, don't even think about it," you know? And so like you said, just getting in touch with that merciful, kind part of God. And like if you've done that in that month, that's an incredible thing to have achieved.
mm, absolutely.
Mm.
I know that you said that there's obviously like not a lot of resources and there's not a lot of conversations about this, but are you aware of any, whether or not it is, say that, and I will pop everything up on the screen and put links below, or it's an Instagram account, or it's a content creator. Are there any resources that you think are some go-tos for people who are considering some of these intersections in their experience?
Yeah, there's the one that I spoke about, which was the Islamic and eating disorders, which is
Mhm.
an Instagram, and also they have a website. They have really good blog posts and a podcast. And she also connects people who can't afford support with therapists in different parts of the world.
Mm,
So yeah, which is really cool. Um, and Mida, which is a charity here in Dubai, well, Middle East. Eating Disorders Association. They do a lot of stuff around eating disorders too. But yeah, I'll send you the links of those two. But otherwise, I would say as much as possible, like try to find your own kind of intersection, if that makes sense. Like there's incredible foundations that I'm sure do bits and bobs like Butterfly Foundation or Beat, who do things and then start to kind of look at some of like there's a lot of like books Islamically that go about more about spirituality and finding your intention and that kind of thing. So you can kind of make your own intersection as well.
Yeah. Is there something in the work that you're doing as a coach that, uh, as far as what is available in Dubai and what is, how coaching can play a role in this, where do you think coaching could play more of a role as far as people who are navigating this period? If you
Oh
were
gosh.
working with someone in like experiencing this month through the lens of recovery, how do you think coaching could be an added benefit?
I feel like it could be so much, and it's definitely something that I do hope to do, which is to kind of help girls who are going through eating disorders navigate this month, feel like they're not alone in it, whether that be in a group setting or a one-to-one, just practically what you can do
Mm,
in the day to navigate those moments when your family are waking up in the morning for suhoor and how you feel about that, when they're breaking their fast, how to navigate those times when people are eating maybe more than they would or different foods and how that can like bring up things that you trigger. How do you deal with eating lunch in the middle of the day when nobody else is fasting? So I
mm,
think that practical stuff when a lot of like the eating disorder thoughts might be popping up of like nobody else eating, why am I eating? Like, can you imagine how hard that is anyway when you're not in the month of Ramadan? So with that extra element, I would love to support people with that and to just find other ways to connect to their faith in the month or just generally all year round that can help them with their recovery, because there are so many aspects of Islam. Like it's a very spiritually deep religion, and there is so much from it that you could take for your recovery. You know.
yeah. I think the
Mm,
lived experience part in particular would be
yeah.
so powerful to have someone like
Yeah.
obviously with the email and text support we do. I think it would be so important
Yeah.
to, at a time of community and connection and, being with family, etc., to just have that person in your back pocket to be like, I get it. I know you might feel
Yes.
like a fish out of water. I know you might feel a bit disconnected in this way. And I have been like, I think that as much as yes, we focus on the lived experience piece as coaches from like the sitting across the table and being able to eat the food that maybe that person is struggling with and show them an example of like, well, I struggled with that too and now I'm here. I think it's actually these moments that are more powerful. Like people, like obviously when we have people navigating, say like Christmas time, which is a very like food heavy time and a very family heavy time, that's where that lived experience piece can be really beneficial to people. So, yeah, I think just having that
Mm.
unspoken shared language and understanding with these kinds of life experiences is invaluable.
Yeah, and I honestly do get it. I really do. It's
Mm,
so tough. It's so tough, but
mhm.
I feel like I've kind of learned so much and so much I would have said to myself then. Like I feel like that's wisdom that I'd love to be able to share on.
Yes.
And and just to say like I have come out the other side. Like I
Yeah.
have recovered and I am able to take part in Ramadan. And that, by the way, I just want to say as well, that didn't happen as soon as I hit within a BMI range.
Mm,
Like in fact, I was in recovery for a couple, like I was in a recovered space, I'd say, for a couple of years before I took place in you took
Mm,
part. And because you know what? Recovery is very important and we have to protect it. And so if I didn't feel like I'm ready to be in a place where I could potentially be triggered, like I didn't want to take part in it. My intentions were in the right
mm.
place. I'm not doing this for other people. And so now I'm able to do it really for the right reasons. And it feels so nice.
Mm. I like that note there, Saf, on just like the cautionary nature of it. And I just have one more question for you kind of about that. I'm just curious about someone in the situation where they're maybe on the edges of disordered eating, right? Like let's say someone has like a bunch of risk factors at play, but haven't necessarily fallen down that hole of diagnosed eating disorder. This time, do you think sort of that nature of like restrictive eating, potential overconsumption of eating actually could put someone at a higher risk of eating disorder development? Like how do you think, if we're talking cautionary, like how could that situation be navigated?
Mm. I think it all comes back to like self-awareness and intention.
Yeah.
I think if you're somebody who feels like that is something that you could slip into and it could trigger you, I think speak to somebody, whether
Yeah.
that's somebody in your family who really gets eating disorders, or a
Yeah.
therapist, or a dietitian. Like, work with a dietitian who's
Mm,
informed with that stuff, where they can tell you what's a good idea to eat in the morning and in the evening, and whether you need, something else
yeah.
later on, at night, and then your intention of like, why are you fasting? And
Mm,
if it's for the right reasons, I think that's where it all comes back to, because just thinking like, what is on your pedestal? What is on your pedestal in this month? Is it like my disordered eating rules and routines and all of those things, or is it the right things? And if I feel like I'm gonna come out of this month with a full blown eating disorder because I've triggered myself so much, like, that's not the point of the month. It's
mm,
so not the point of the month.
mm,
That doesn't bring you closer to God at all. If anything, I felt quite far away, when I had my eating disorder, because I felt so disconnected. I felt quite numb when I
mm.
had my eating disorder. So yeah, I think it's that introspection and awareness, and just being conscious of like, okay, this is something that could be a trigger for me. This could be a risk factor for me.
mm, mm.
Yeah, I think, yeah, being aware of the fact that sometimes people are in pre-contemplation and,
Yeah.
they're just not going to be aware, and hopefully they'll be able to engage in something which will help them to navigate it. I think the dietitian is a great idea just as that first step, as far as like always just come from a place of caution. Um,
Mm.
Saf, thank you so much for this. It was fascinating, but it was also just incredibly heartwarming, like listening
Yeah.
to how you interact with your faith and what your faith means to you, and just the way that you speak about it, and the way that you speak about your whole experience in the journey is just unbelievably beautiful. And as I said, it is a real privilege to get to listen
Mm,
to you speak about it. It is like, it's a very personal thing, so the generosity is very, very, very kind.
mm.
Oh no, it's you girls that have made me feel so comfortable, to be honest. It feels like a very like, 360 moment, because when I was younger, I used to be really wouldn't speak about it. I really was against speaking about it because I was very like shy about my faith. So to be able to speak about it
Mm,
with you girls means so much. So thank you. And I
mm.
hope it came across in the right way and it helps people.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, thank you so much, Sab. I think like your voice is just it's like a warm hug and a cup of
It
tea.
is. You're
One,
so
like
easy to listen to.
it's so
Oh,
soothing.
girl.
And yeah, it's just, yeah, we just adore who you are as a person. And I'm so so grateful for this conversation, because I've just learnt so much. And I'm also
Yeah.
so inspired by it.
Yes.
I'm so
And
grateful.
if people are going to come and support you, we just before the recording talked about the fact that your incredible podcast Rewired with Meg of Megsy Recovery YouTube era is back up and running. You have, I think, 2 episodes which have gone up this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unreal.
Too.
Fantastic. So that is currently up on Spotify. Where else can people come and support you?
I've got Instagram as well, so I can send that to you. It's Safia ED Recovery Coach. We've got a real wide Instagram as well, and yeah, hopefully we will spread our wings and get the podcast on other platforms too. That's the goal. So yeah, thank you.
Fabulous. Well, we're microphone triplets. We've all got the same microphone. We're all in the
I know.
podcasting recovery universe together. It's like what do they call it? It's like the Marvel character universe. We're like in
Is.
this recovery world together, which I love when I get to do it with people like
Mm.
yourselves.
We should also, just side note, do a episode with Saf and Meg. And there's like 4 people in it. That would be
A
fantastic.
major Q&A session.
Yes,
Fantastic. Yes.
yes, she would love that. I'm going
I'll
to sign
plant
her up
that
already.
seed. Great.
She would love it.
Like
Amazing.
Meg watches this back and she's like, okay, fine.
Oh,
Great.
she'll love it. She'll love it.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Well, we'll definitely put that on the diary. Saf, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
And
you.
can't wait to get to chat to you both again very soon.
Thanks, girls. Bye.
Bye.